so the world, and welcome to my review of. Sorry, now I can't do the joke because of the audio feedback. It killed the vibe.
Sorry.
That's okay. So, welcome to Dimelo's Cinema Club. I'm JP Suno, and I'm joined with our panel. As always, we got El Don Dino with Jason. Where the fuck is Dino? I introduced him first. Gone? What the fuck?
Unprofessional.
literally a cable, my power cable fell off my computer, and I was like, oh no, I gotta plug this in before it dies. And then I was thinking he's probably gonna say my name first. And sure enough, so please forgive me and continue, Mr. JP.
It's not good. First, I couldn't do the joke. Then we're good. This is a good start. It's good to start this fucking lighthearted because holy shit. I'm joined, of course, with Dino, with Jason, as always. Steve Dez, leader of the house, and back is Raymond. Woo! If you guys remember,
here too, guys.
and Michaela, my bad. We're off to a really, really good start.
JP, you want a do-over?
There is no do-overs in the cinema club. I don't even think there's do-overs with Oya to begin with, but that's okay. So the film we have seen and we're going to review is Grave of the Fireflies. The animation coordinator for our last film, The Last Unicorn, was Toru Hara, and he was one of the executive producers for this movie. And a lot of the animators, the Japanese animators from the previous film actually ended up working on this film as well as many of the old Studio Ghibli classics. So, why did I pick this movie? I've only seen this film one time, and that's actually very common with a lot of folks who have seen this film. It's a tough watch only because of the very emotional and very touchy subjects that it deals with, and it's a long. It's only an hour 30 minutes long, but it's a long ride.
It's an hour 30.
It's only an hour 30. It's one of their shortest films. Yeah. So with that being said, we're gonna go into first impressions. We'll start with since I fucking forgot you in the beginning, I'll give you. I'll give you the first go. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. You just live together. It's whatever. Here, by your side.
Right.
Hi.
Hi.
No. Oh my gosh. This one was dramatic. Yeah. I mean, it's a really well made. It's beautifully. It's a beautiful film. It's just like the subject matter is just so tough. I don't even know how to describe watching this film is like, just because I think it's important, and I think that it's something that we need to learn about and something that we have to be aware of in history in general. But at the same time, oof. That's my initial thoughts.
I'll pass it on to Raymond, because I know that you've actually seen this film before. What did you think about revisiting this film?
So this is, I think, my fourth time watching it. But it's been a few years since I watched it last. I think I watch it every 4 to 6 years. The first time I watched it was 10th grade in English class, and all of us were weeping the whole way through. Setsuko and Seita were just names we would yell out because it impacted our kind of view of the world so much, and we really loved the characters. And since then I've watched it 3 more times. And my
Is that
initial
college?
thought,
Sorry, is that college or high school that
high
they
school.
high school they that's awesome. Anyway, go on. I was just
It and I think even watching it now, I just go back and like I wish it was kind of required viewing for students while they're still in grade school. Because it's just it holds up. It's great storytelling, gives a different perspective from like our textbooks. Um, and it does so without like getting too political, but you can then like that's what our class was about, was like about point of view, political and social context. And those were kind of the conversations that we had after viewing it in class. So it was really, really dope. And every time I watch it, my initial thought is it holds up so well. And I think it does so by being so in the perspective of Setsuko and Seita, and and really honing in on their age, because it feels realized, authentic. The gravity of like say I think it's Setsuko doesn't want to leave behind like a doll at the beginning. It's like, no, we got to get my doll. And you're just like, yeah, that seems like the number one priority in that moment. And then obviously as the film goes, those start to waver. But yeah, initial thoughts. That was mine.
All right, we'll pass it on to Jason and Dino. You guys fight to the death. Who goes first?
what's up? First time watching for me, it's heartbreaking. It might be the saddest thing we've watched in Dimelo. And I feel like we've watched a lot of sad, messed up things, but this one is the one that definitely got me the most. I think at this point I've seen 95% of Studio Ghibli or Ghibli films. But yeah, it was interesting. This one, it's super hard to find. Even though they have it on HBO, they have Disney, I think now owns the Studio Ghibli, catalog. So it's like everywhere that they have the Studio Ghibli films, this one's not there, which makes sense, right? Because the U.S. is like, yeah, maybe let's not have that out there, you know. And again, I kind of like Ray Ray said that it's not preachy or politicized. It's just that point of view, right? That I agree with Raymond that we should see other people's point of view, and that can create empathy. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's very sad. I'm glad that like the first freaking line of the movie kind of tells you what's gonna happen. Because boy, if you go in there not knowing that, it's whew, it's one of those things. It's like if you were to start watching Bambi and you didn't know the mom was gonna get killed, right, until the end of it. Like it would be completely different than you knowing, like, oh, they just murked Bambi. Woo, which language am I trying to say Bambi in? Uh, they just murked Bambi's mom, and yeah. So I enjoyed it. It's extremely sad. I think it is, something that hopefully more people get to watch. Especially, and I agree with Raymond, just like it's obtainable and it's there and it's not preachy and it doesn't have to be politicized or anything. It's just like this is something that was going on, you know, and let's just see what we can see from it. But that's me. You first time, Jason?
You guys want me to get into it, or we want to switch frames and go to Steve?
He said Jason and Dino fight for it. I took that as we go.
All right, well, I'll go straight into my first impression. First time seeing the film, I loved it. I think it's the most feel-good film that we've watched here this year on Cinema Club. So thank you, JP, for blessing us with this selection.
Problem.
Honestly, I think this film is like really indicative of what Cinema Club is about. You know, this is a film that I've never seen before. It's always been on my list. I've always seen it around. I've seen the box in the video store since I was like a child, and I'm just happy to have finally seen it. And it does make me want to explore more of Studio Ghibli's stuff because I think I've maybe only seen one other film of theirs. This movie, wasn't as I was fully prepared for this to be a tough movie to watch, you know, right from the intro. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And it wasn't that bad because I kept in the back of my mind, like, you know what? I could also, this story is so good, I could also watch it as a live action film.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's animated. It's anime. And that to me kind of suspends the realism of it. So I didn't have to like be that emotionally invested. That doesn't take anything away from like the emotional intensity and fortitude of this thing because it's there for sure. But for me, I was able to kind of like distance my own emotional self from this thing. It's very good. It's very well crafted. I was also expecting a much longer film because I think the first Studio Ghibli film I watched with my sister a couple years ago was Princess Mononoke, and that thing did not end. It just kept going on and on, and I've never finished it because it was so long. It's still going on, I hear. But this thing was short, man. Like short and sweet. So short and sweet. I'll probably watch it again before the year's over. To be honest with you, I kind of want to dissect it a little bit more. It's a really great film. It's to me, it might be top 1,000 ever made. I mean, it's really fantastic, and I can understand why it's a harder film to find over here and harder to find an English subtitle because it is a little bit politically ostracizing. You know, given the fact that this was America that did this to Japan. Some might say unnecessarily, but it's it's a heck of a story, man, and it's just it really dives into the human condition of such a tragic thing, but it's such a microscopic piece of just two children, two orphans, essentially, and it's just like here's a month in their life or however long it lasted because I don't feel like it maybe lasted that long. I don't think they were able to like sustain themselves that long, but it's also very beautiful and kind of wonderful because they have their brother sister companion bond and their children, so they're really making the best of it, and they were so brave, and what's his name? Psycho? Seita?
Yeah, Seita.
I mean, just like the brilliance of that character to just as a child to just hold it all together, to hold his what's left of his family together, and it's almost reminiscent of A Beautiful Mind in that way, or not A Beautiful Mind, a beauty. What's it called? A beauty, beautiful.
Life is beautiful.
Life is beautiful in that way. So yeah. First impressions were juicy. Yum 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 yum.
That's good to know. So I'm gonna pass on last two Des.
This movie, like everybody said, is phenomenal. It's great. It's a great piece of film. First time watching it, never heard of it, but I think the cover or logo or whatever, I seen it in one of the streaming services before. So I browsed through it, but I never really clicked on it or whatever. Definitely was not expecting it. One of the things that I absolutely loved about this film was the details. The animators have such an eye for details. Because from like the dead people with like the little worms and the flies, and they were like in the river, there was like a little spider swimming on it. Like those little things I love because typically when you watch certain animes, cartoons, mangas, the background is not alive. It just seems like it's just something that's just there, decorating. But when you see lively stuff, you see birds, you see an actual environment, a world living within that world is refreshing. So I really enjoyed that. First impressions, great movie. we'll get deep into it.
Very cool. All right. So I feel so unprepared because I don't know what to like really talk about next. I guess for what I want to talk about next is probably the reason why I picked the movie to begin with, because I only seen it once before. And that was a long time ago. But scenes in this film, like it stuck with me, such as when they see after the fire bombing what happened to their mom, the beginning scene where we see Seita in the train station, and then when Seita's at the bank and he's learning about that the war is over, like scenes of that, like it just stuck. Like I just could remember vividly just from that one time watching. So I want to ask you guys: was there any scene that like stuck out the most and will most likely stay with you from watching this film?
You want us to just jump in, or you want to
Oh,
call
I'm
names?
sorry. It could be anybody, I guess. Like,
Cool. All right, well then I'll jump in since you're a bunch of quiet little micey mice. Scenes that stuck out to me. Phew, there are so many, man. There's so many good things in this film. Um, one of the things that stuck out to me was when they moved into their own little place, their little crook, yeah, the little shelter crook spot or whatever. It was nice because they were so happy to just like be independent and protecting each other, to have their own little food, and they were so happy to set up their own little place, and their spirits were just so innocent, and I love that, and I just love the way all that was directed, you know, and that it's hard to like it's challenging to like get what they got out of this movie. The emotional responses, and I think all that just comes from truth. And this movie felt very, very truthful. Like I feel like this probably happened. You know what I mean? And it probably didn't, but it feels like it did. And it's just their relationship is just so sweet, and that was one of the moments outside of the very beginning of the film where you really see like their true sweetness. And Dino did an interesting thing. We watched this film last night, and Dino went back and said, "I need to go back and watch the beginning of this thing real quick." And we watched like the first 5 minutes again, and I'm glad we did that because it kind of shows what you're getting into, and it kind of shows like who these people are just in that first little intro, and it just showed me that this movie has a lot of like rewatch value to it. I can see why Raymond has watched it so many times in his life, and I'm going to watch it again in the next 2 months for sure. But yeah, that was my favorite scene. That's the scene that I kind of identified with. I don't know, maybe it was like the independent nature of it. They were kids just like fending for themselves in a big harsh world, and they were essentially homeless. And then she asked him that she goes, "This will be the kitchen. This will be the bedroom. But where will our bathroom be, Seti?" And he's like, "Ew." It's like with their kids and they haven't thought all this out. They were just, it was almost like they were playing, but playing for their lives.
To that, I would say it's got a very Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn kind of thing of just like, oh, I can go out and I can make my own thing and I can take care of myself. And yeah, for sure. I'll
go straight into yours.
Yeah. I also want to jump on something Steve had mentioned of like the small details, and that's one thing. Like great anime or great animation, and Studio Ghibli specifically, it's these details that they take they put the effort into that you might not even think. And I noticed a few of them. One of them was in the flashback when the kids and the parents are together and they're getting their picture taken, and both kids just like hold their breath, right? Because it was like holding your breath to take a picture, and that was the smallest thing. Which it's like, this is a cartoon and anime. You don't have to, like if you wanted to, they could just like close their mouth and the picture would take it. But it was such a small little thing of the like two little kids just kind of holding it, and then as soon as the picture was taken, they're like. And there were a lot of those small things that I think just added that realism to it. Of just like, yeah, this is a cartoon, but we'll add some extra, small details here and there just to give it some extra life to it. Of scenes, I mean, so many scenes are gonna stick. Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said. Get out of my life! So many scenes are gonna are gonna stick with me, and some of the really dark ones, like, spoilers, but the mother all bandaged. My language no muy
We know
bueno
what you're
right now.
saying.
Yeah, bandaged up, and there's like the worms are starting to, like, the maggots and stuff are starting to crawl around the dead body. So stuff like that you see multiple times throughout the film, right? Bugs are real big in this film. I feel like even what certain bugs kind of represent and stuff like that. So that's an ongoing thing throughout it. Specifically, lightning bugs, which they have it as fireflies, which makes sense because of all the bombings and the fire coming down. So yeah, there are a lot of jarring moments that I definitely think about it. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning today and I couldn't go back to sleep, and part of it was me just kind of rewatching the film in my head at 5:30 in the morning. I mean, and other stuff, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna get up. Like, I keep thinking about this cartoon that it's again very powerful. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, um, this time around, the kind of opening present day scene, or I guess that'd be a question to ask y'all, is like that opening red scene. Whenever we see him in those scenes, is that present day? Is that like the afterlife? Whatever it is, those I found those the most striking this time around watching. And then from the first time watching it, um seeing the fireflies initially grabbed my attention because when I first moved to Texas from LA, I was in this small German town called New Braunfels, and um, you were like out in nature because you were in the middle. Back then, nowhere. Now people are gonna be like, New Braunfels isn't nowhere. It's like a little city or town or whatever. But back then, it was like so nature that like you could walk outside and you just see the whole lawn and outdoors be covered with fireflies. And so, um, much in the way that is centered on these two children, it really reminded me of my childhood, in terms of that and how like wondrous and kind of imaginative fireflies can be, because they are these things that just like light up in the darkness. And so then reflecting on those two, like watching it the first time and now, a scene that I just thought was really beautiful and gorgeously like brought to the screen is when they're in the darkness and they bring in those fireflies, and we can see the characters like black silhouettes almost. And then as the fireflies come, they bring in the light one by one. And in the first one, it lights up their faces, and she's so drawn to the firefly at first, and then it lights up her brother's face, and then she's like, I can see you now. And I don't know, something so playful.
Well, I mean, I think that's why they focus on fireflies too. Like, I don't think it's so much a metaphor about. I mean, it is a metaphor about death, but not like in like a way that it's like the whole fact that they do light up the dark and they only do so for such a short time. You know, where like just like these children. But yeah.
Well, I guess that's the other part of the, I guess, realism of the cartoon, or just the detail. Because as soon as they brought those fireflies into their little home, and I was like, oh man, those fireflies or lightning bugs, whatever, are going to be dead in the morning. You know, because I'm thinking again, and I guess kind of Raymond of thinking when he was a little kid, of when I was a little kid, and we would like put them in a jar, you know, and even have like holes in there or whatever, and then by the morning they were dead. So that's something that could easily have just been like, yeah, we're not gonna show that, right? We're gonna just have them as just this beautiful kind of thing that they're working with or dealing with, but instead they're like using that as a tool, right? And it's the little girl that even makes a grave for the, you know, and they kind of talk about the death of their mother at that point, and like to be able to take that is, again, it's very powerful, just to take something, take a kid, and use those kind of images. I think is very well done.
Yeah, for sure. Des, did you have any scenes that stuck out to you or would stay with you?
Definitely that beach scene, man. That beach scene was very powerful to me because you know they were having such a fun time out there playing and doing all that, and then all of a sudden she discovers like a dead body, you know, and that represents such a powerful moment, and especially a young person's life that is like, oh, the world is not just play, like real stuff be happening. And I feel like that was like the first encounter of like the truth, you know, of like slowly uncovering what actually has been going on, because even, you know, her mom's death was kept from her. So that was like the unraveling of it slowly but surely. So
Yeah. And I don't know what else to ask, but like I kind of want to talk more about the like just the death of it all, because like there's a lot of dying in this film, and it's so weird because like I think the kind of the shortness of the film kind of represents it as well, where the lifespan of a firefly is very short and it's fleeting, and uh, in this case, so is happiness in childhood. Like we all experience childhood and happiness at some points in our life, but eventually it all comes to an end. And sadly, with these two characters, like it's through actions of not of their own. I mean, yes, the things happen where they could, like, especially the older brother, he could have done some better choices, but like it was beyond his control, like really, and like it's so crazy. Like I think that's like just the innocence of children and whatnot, and that's like, it's just the unforgivingness
Of the world.
of the world, basically, because
But that's what makes it a hard watch,
yeah,
because they are maintaining like this sense of innocence, and that's what makes his character so heartbreaking. Is he has to be one of the few individuals who can cross that line back and forth to the real world and to Setsuko's world.
Yeah.
Like he's the only one, and we have to watch him bear all of this weight to protect this little girl, and even then he ends up failing ultimately. You know,
like,
which is it's what makes it tough.
Yeah. Actually, I want to talk.
And like so much of like this entire film is just like so much of it could have been prevented, and I think that's also what makes it like so gut wrenching.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know like this time around, because when I remember watching the film, like I did knew that I vaguely remember that it was family that separated them, or them that made them choose the life that they ended up going out on, like the aunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she's such a. It seems so weird this time watching it, how much of a 180 it feels like, for her to suddenly like kind of be begrudgingly like helping these children out, which is so crazy because like you get that feeling from most of the adult characters in this film, where it's like they're either of no help or they honestly, due to circumstance, they can't. And you kind of want to like be mad at these characters, like blame them for what happened to these children. Like, who in the right mind would let a child die and just starve? But like, it's during a time of war, and I couldn't help but think to myself, was like, well, what would I have done in that same scenario? Because like it happens every day where, especially here in LA, like we walk by homeless people all the time, and like the right person would say, yeah, I would try to help them out, but like to what extent, or like to what ends are people willing to help out another person? And like, I guess I got a lot of that like this time watching it from the film, because I wanted really badly to be mad at a lot of these characters, but I couldn't, because I couldn't help but think, well, they're not bad people. Like, well, yeah,
the aunt was a bit of
the aunt was
like
kind of
out of all of them. I think the aunt was, because like you kind of get the implication that like she was resentful towards their family before like the war even happened.
Yeah.
And then once she realized that she had 2 more mouths to feed, like instead of being like, okay, they're kids, like I need to grow the fuck up and just like, she straight up like, and she even makes a point to make sure that they're not eating the same amount of food. She makes
They're not. Say that again, Makeda. She makes a point that what?
that they don't get like the same amount of food as her family.
But she wasn't. Oh, so I totally agree. I will not to defend the aunt, but she wasn't eating the rice either. She said that the 3 of them were gonna eat porridge, and the dad and her daughter that were going and I guess working for the war effort, they were gonna be having the rice. So she put herself with the kids of we're eating porridge for lunch and for
To a
breakfast.
certain extent, though.
Right, totally. I'm just saying, right, that they're, and as kids, how are you going to understand that, right? But I do at least
caught on to that right away,
What?
and they were so polite. Like that's the scene that really does get me, because like they could have turned it into a yelling match. Like the
Right.
writers could have easily done that, but
Yeah.
they didn't. Like they made the little boy go, "Oh, thank you," and I guess that's what makes this movie like so good. That's one of the little details.
Well, then the cousin, the aunt's daughter comes back, and even I don't know if her husband also mentioned that, but definitely her daughter was like, "Oh, I forget the wording, but it was like, are you giving them a hard time again, or are you, And she was like, no. So there is that sense where, like, clearly it seems like maybe the daughter and the husband might have been a little more, connected with
Lenient.
lenient with the kids, especially. I don't know how old the boy was. I'm like, wouldn't he be able to find something to help? But if he were old enough, they would have taken him to the front. That
Well,
it was at that point. I feel like they would have taken him to be part of the either.
And that's like another thing too, though. It's just he was part of something. Like he was part of the fire brigade. Like that's why he has the uniform. But since his entire town burnt to the ground, and it's like almost like this aunt kind of holds him responsible for that because his dad was in the military.
Yeah, and I guess like in a way like he's, because I thought about that too while watching the films. Like, why can't Seita find work, or like, because my mind was having trouble with it too. It's like, how old or young is this child? But at the end of the film, I figure it's like well, right now he's totally focused on his little sister Setsuko. So I'm betting even if he had the means to go off and find work, or even fight for his country as well, that his main objective was going to be the little sister, because mom and dad, like, they're gone. He knows that they're both gone, and he's the only one who will be there for her. Because even the aunt, like,
would you leave a 6-year-old child alone with that woman?
I think she was 4. She was way young. Like, she was basically
would you
a
leave
toddler.
her alone? with that woman.
She was very much a child, if you think about it. She was as much of a child as they were. You
No,
know,
and I think that she makes a great foil because of that. You
yeah.
know, she lets her resentment and her own fear get in the way of like helping another like two individuals who clearly needed more help than they
She was
got.
No, you're right about that. It's a good point. She's kind of the evil stepmom in a way, but she never comes off as evil. And I think that might be in part because Japanese culture is so polite.
I
So
mean,
there's no.
Sorry, finish your thought, and then
There's no broil up in that scene that we were talking about when they kind of hash it out, or they don't hash it out, and he decides he wants to leave or whatever. And there is no big fight because I think maybe they're children and they're taught to respect their elders so much so. But he knows better that it would be in their best interest to maybe leave at this point because they're not being treated fairly or the way that they feel like they could treat themselves. She's a foil, but I don't think the average viewer is going to see her that way up front. I feel like the foil in this film may just be like war and hunger, starvation, our treatment towards people who are downtrodden. I feel like that's who the film focuses on. I feel like she might just be a connecting piece to that, if that makes sense. She's just like an integral part to push that part of the story forward. Because she's never truly mean to them. She's just very petty. She says that one very petty comment at dinner where she goes, "Oh, the nerve of you guys! You keep your own food and your own rice in your room, and you don't share any of that with us. And then you think you're going to come out here and have seconds." And it's like, what a thing to say to children! Of course, they want their own little piece of earth, their own piece of life.
Not only that, she had separated rice for them, like the half. That's where I do feel like there was that like 180 or 360 whatever term that she had, because it was like, wait, I thought you guys were sharing that kind of stuff.
And they sold the last little piece of their mother to get more rice for themselves. Of course, it should be for them. It'd be very nice if they shared it with everybody, but that's not really.
Did. They did.
Oh, they shared
that rice that she separated into the glass. Mm-hmm. That rice came from selling the clothes, the kimonos. Okay. She's like, we can.
She got the lion's share of it.
Huh?
She got the lion's share of it. Yeah.
Yeah. She pushed them. She pushed them to sell that to get rice for everyone.
And then she accused them of not contributing.
Yeah.
After that, like, well, you're not a part of the war effort. So she was very much a child in that regard. Right. The only one who truly wasn't contributing in any real way, besides the rearing of the children or being the mother of the house, was her. She was projecting.
Right. But I mean.
Which is brilliant storytelling, by the way.
At the same time, what would you do for your family, right? Because she's like, the important thing is my husband, my daughter, and me.
Mm-hmm.
That is,
even though that's her nephew.
Yeah. Right. And because at first, she at first was like, "Ooh, you Navy people," right? Because the dad was in the Navy, like. Oh, you guys have pickled this and you have that, blah, blah, blah. And then once that started drying out, it changed. So it's like clearly she was jealous at first of just like the rations that they had were clearly better rations. Before the mom died in that bombing, they were clearly having better rations than everyone else because the dad was high up in the Navy. Mm-hmm. And then once that started to go away, then it's like, okay, now things are going to start changing. And now, now that they couldn't benefit from that, like the naval rations, then it became an issue. And that's, I think, what changed her, But
well, I mean, I don't know if they were like actual rations just because like they were all pickled and dried stuff. So it kind of indicates that stuff that like the mom kind of collected and like held on to, and before things got really bad, like fact that
in the whole pickle thing maybe, but she did mention in that first interaction when they brought all that, she was going through all their stuff And she
Mm.
even mentioned in that point the rations and like how their rations were better than their rations. She had a line in there talking about how they had better rations from being from a Navy family than everyone else. So not necessarily the pickle, but the line was there.
Yeah. It's just, is that again her projecting, or is that actually true or not?
A little bit of both, probably.
Pretty much both. Because like at this point, like in the film, like especially near the beginning of the third act, you find out that it's almost every man for themselves at that point. Where even like characters who are more empathetic towards Seita's and Setsuko's plight, the farmer he ends up having, he can't even sell his food. Like they're rationing to the point where it's like, well, now I have my lifestyle is now to provide for me because there's not enough food for everyone. Like I have to grow this food for myself now. I can't even sell it. And even like the officer who probably like I was like in my mind I was like, wait, is the film gonna make a turn that I don't remember where maybe this officer is gonna help out Seita, which he's very empathetic towards his plight as well, especially since he knows his family's background. But the most he can do was just offer him water and maybe the night there. That was it. He didn't offer him a job. He couldn't even offer him money, any of that sort. He was just being a polite human being and said, well, since you're here, would you like a glass of water? And he's like, no, I gotta go back to my sister.
Right.
So it's like, even the best of people, like, they couldn't do anything by the end of this movie.
Yeah, no, but like there is a point where she she kind of forces them to go away.
Yeah, because I'll admit, I think the whole like the worst part, what could have been, that was probably like right when they left. It's like that we're not gonna no, we're not gonna reach that point. We're already not welcome here. Like we're not gonna suddenly what we all thought would have been the inciting incident to leave. He leaves before that happens. Yeah. Des or Raymond, did you guys want to chime in or anything like that?
I mean, every time I watch it, I think my perspective on what y'all have been discussing does change quite a bit. I don't ever agree. I don't think I'll ever get to the point where I completely agree with the aunt, but I do recognize kind of her as a complex character who is kind of probably juggling a ton of things, and I go, oh, okay, this is starting to make a little more sense than last time, because I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, expletives about that aunt. But then even this time I was trying to wrap my head a little bit more around someone tells Seita like, why don't you just go apologize and move back in with your aunt? And it's one of the first few times I think I actually took in that line and let the weight of that sink in a bit more. And obviously there'd be no movie if that happened and this, that, and the other. But it did start to make me question okay, well, we are seeing this story through the lens of Seita and Setsuko, but is there, if I took as I take steps back each time I watch it, is there blame to be shared elsewhere, and what does that look like, and does that even matter or not? But yeah, it was the first few times where I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand the aunt a little bit more, and then on Seita's side, just recognizing that he is probably this young and just as hard-headed person as maybe some of these other characters in the film, where I think when you're so focused, I imagine if I'm so focused on saving my little sister, I'm going to have some kind of shutters up and not be able to see the other possibilities, as few and far between as they may be.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really great point because, like, I never thought that the ant was evil for doing this. Like, that's not the word. Like, I mean, it's its own kind of evil. Apathy tends to lean that way, but that's neither here nor there. No, like, I mean, that's kind of what this is. Is this is what happens when society breaks down, when your community breaks down irrevocably, whether it's your fault or not. You know, like that's what it is.
Yeah, like half of that community is straight up gone.
Yeah,
Like it's so crazy, like seeing how
like
because even in the beginning, like they say, oh, like our aunt lives only a few miles from here, like not even like a different town, like maybe just a neighboring town, but like how just the firebombing of one area because when they go back, there's nothing left. Just maybe that city hall or rec center that they mentioned, which is probably the only thing made out of concrete, and everything else like just ash and soot. Maybe there's a few train rails available, but no, like it's that was a huge thing for me. Like because I didn't remember that part about them about Seita going back and finding his like little capsule that he was trying to make before they went to the shelters. I completely forgot that scene. So him going back and like, oh, there's hardly any ruins. It's just gone. Like, oh god, that was heavy.
because I mean, and that's why these things are important. Is like we need to understand, like as much as we'd like to think that we're fully independent individuals who can, like, if something really hit the fan, I would survive the zombie apocalypse. But like at the end of the day, like you need a place to rest your head. You need food to eat. You need protection. You need warmth. You know, and what happens when all of that breaks down to a point where those things aren't easily accessible? You know, those things turn into dangerous things.
So I will say, I know, JP, you had mentioned even just walking around, downtown, or I mean, we're all real close to Skid Row, and people that are in need and are, going hungry and stuff like that. At the same time, if we're talking about war, there's a lot of wars going on right now that we luckily are not a part of, right? Whether or not, the U.S. military or whatever is involved, there are other wars, there are other military conflicts throughout the world where this kind of stuff is probably happening, right? Where there are kids that have to kind of take care of each other, right? And so it's definitely something that maybe that's why it resonates so much, right? Not just our experience or like what we think of our family, but this is happening right now somewhere in the world. There's a kid that probably has a younger sibling or multiple, and their parents, aren't there anymore due to whether it's war or whatever. And I mean that's everywhere due to in Mexico or Central America and stuff like that due to the different cartels, right? And a lot of they're either old men or very young kids that kind of like a certain range of age is non-existent because they're out, so it's very for being a cartoon that's really well done and very very powerful, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, it just shows how little things change.
true. And like because where the film ends and where it begins, also like that's not a lot of passage of time. It's like I don't think Seda died. I think Seda died not too long after his sister, but like just seeing him at the scene of animation to where he was in the beginning of the film is like you look 100 times worse, and this is probably in the span of like I'm going to assume just by a few months because it was 45, and by that point the war was already over for them. So it's like wow, like we didn't get to see that part of the story, like how he coped losing his sister.
He didn't.
and like, and there, and in the station, like there was multiple children there, and the station masters there, they even made a comment about, it's like, oh shoot, here's another one who the life is fading away from his eyes. You could tell it's like, damn, that it's so cold, but at the same time, it's like, no, I get that. I've seen that where it's you just accept it as a part of existence. You if it feels cold and feels very unempathetic, but like you just accept it. It's like fuck. I don't know.
Mhm.
Question for I have a quick question for because I thought of this in the Ghibli movies. Is there because this one when we went back to Jason said we watched like the first 5 minutes after the movie ended, and they're riding the train, and I feel like in Spirited Away it's also going is that something that's in Japanese culture, or is it just I forget the main director creator of Studio Ghibli of having to ride a train from one part of you know between the celestial realm, I guess, and Earth. Is that something, or am I just thinking that? Because it definitely in Spirited Away and maybe another movie, there is a lot of train riding, and it's usually almost like a purgatory or just in between the living and the dead.
I think. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think that might just be an artist's interpretation of that metaphor exactly, because like if you think about how like the Japanese, how like a lot of their cities are structured and how like their public transportation is structured, like they do spend a lot of like intermittent time on that. So I think that would be a very easy connection for an artist to be like, oh, this is exactly what I could make this and have people understand it as.
Yeah, and like culturally, like ever since the British introduced rails in Japan, like that became like their own thing. Like the trolley that we see in the beginning in that film, and also the trolley in Spirited Away. I think they're about the same. I'm almost certain they're the same type of like trolley, and I know like because I've seen this before, like back in the day, like um, one of like a young working woman's job was actually to be the conductor of these trolleys. So they were really popular back in the day. Basically, how in the U.S. we had Rosie the Riveter, where the female workforce was to make our planes and weaponry for the boys who are out on the field and the field of war. In Japan, I believe like women ended up taking up the transportation jobs that men left behind when they were off fighting as well. So like I know culturally like the trolley and trains they're very huge, and I'm sure it's an easy allegory where it's like every train, every rail passageway has an A to a B, and that's basically life. We start from A to B.
Yeah. And there's something very passive also about like sitting in a train
Yeah.
too, which kind of adds like another layer where it's like you're just a passenger.
Mhm.
Like you don't drive it, you don't steer it.
Yeah, you're at the mercy of wherever the journey is taking you.
Mm-hmm. But I'm also sure there's probably some folklore involved too. I just don't know it. I'd be kind of shocked if there wasn't.
Well, just now I just thought I just remember Maya Angelou's first job was cable car driver in San Francisco. I remember she brings that up in I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and she talks about how she even lied about her age to get that job, and like in the book she goes more into depth, but there is something about you have that control, right? And that kind of like you saying point A to point B, and there's really nothing you know that stops you in between one point and another. I mean, there's the physical stuff that can happen or mechanical issues, but it
Yeah.
is kind of like one thing is for certain. You have this route and stuff like that. So, yeah. I don't know why I thought Maya Angelou, but that's one
When
thing.
when you mentioned that too, I mean, there's so many things in that book that come to mind, but the fact that you mentioned that part reminds me when she says something, but she says it 100 times better than I'll ever be able to. But she says something like it was never lost on me that um it was never lost on me that we were able to gain resources at the expense of another people losing theirs or something like that. And then she talks about the cable car next. But
Yeah. Well, it was right when she, and this again, this is I read it in Paraguay, back in high school, and it was right after she gave birth, right after she had a baby and all that, and so she was still like 14 or 15, I think, when she had her first kid, and so just the way she talked about it and just what like and again Maya Angelou being so great with words and describing stuff, the way she describes the cable car and like the different poles and stuff like that is just on a whole nother level, right? And I guess there's that kind of description that we see in the Ghibli movies. It's like in the cartoons, it's like it's a cartoon, but there's so much depth and and not just description, but things that are purposefully put in certain positions. But yeah, read Maya Angelou. She's very good.
And don't forget to pay the fare when you enter the train.
Mm.
They have
That's
jobs
another
too.
aspect to it too.
Oh, okay. What else?
Oh, like the whole fair thing. It's very Greek river Styx ish. You pay the ferryman to take it across the river.
Oh, yeah.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, final one. Did something? Do we know where the ring went? Because I know the ring was there, and then towards the end, the little sister was tucking on the marbles. But did we?
It,
The ring was never brought back up, right? And it didn't get sold or anything, right?
yeah. It's crazy. I thought about that as well. How like a lot of monetary stuff or like very solid things that were introduced in this film, like nothing ever came to be of them. Almost as if it's that like it's almost second. It almost becomes secondary once it's literally about just survival. Like Setsuko's little coin purse, having her coins and her marbles. Like we don't see those marbles until like literally she dies. Because she's literally like just to feel something in her mouth, she decides to, you know, chew on the marbles. And we don't see that coin purse. We don't see the money that she had. We don't see the ring, and we almost kind of forget the box that Seita had, which I'm assuming had the remains of the mom, right? Or something
No,
that
no,
made
no,
her
no.
mom.
I always assumed it was the ashes too, but then I realized that she was burned in a
in a
mass
in a
grave.
pyre, yeah.
Right, so
No. So I do remember this part. The mom is in a box that was in the shelter underneath, kind of like a bench. But he says that he put some of the ashes of the sister in the can. And so that's kind of why I wanted to rewatch the beginning, because at the beginning, when the cleaners find it and he tries to open the can of hard candy and kind of gets cut, and it was like, throw that away. And he tosses it, and ashes break off and pop out. And even it
right.
seems like a little bone.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because
It was
And
crazy.
that's the sister. I
Yeah.
think he didn't take with him the mom, and that's I think because he even says after he like burned, cremated his sister, he's like, I never went back to the shelter again. So he had said that he added some of her ashes, and he went on with with his life, I guess. Which I imagine at that point, right? He must have felt like he failed, right? I think he just kind of at that point gave up.
I think so
Yeah.
too.
It's crazy because that detail regarding the ashes in the candy thing, I didn't catch that at all. Like, but Kayla got it really damn quick. Because like you said, like as soon as it hits the ground, you see a little bit of bone come out, and you literally said, "Oh my god, that's her remains," and I was like, "Fuck, I didn't know that."
Yeah, and
So,
the
but
fireflies go flying.
yeah, but I was like, "Damn, that is fucking heavy," because I remember that scene differently. I did not remember him putting her remains into the the tin can.
Well, we
So-
don't physically see him do it.
Yeah,
he says he
no.
did it.
But like, but how you caught it on so quick, like took me off guard. He's like, "Fuck, I think you're right,"
Well,
because her apparition appears as soon as we see the bone,
mhm.
and then she sees her brother in trouble, but then his ghost is there to reassure. He's like, "No, we're fine. We're finally okay." And what a way to fucking start a movie, shit.
Well,
Well,
that
you picked it.
some of the
Yeah, that's
ashes
true.
that he got was like her finger.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh man. Man. Yeah, this movie was hella rough. An emotional ride for sure. Damn. Oh god, I don't know what else to really talk about that. We kind of delved into detail already. Oh man. Was there anything else that we wanted to say, or are you ready to close the book on this one?
I think we're ready to close it down, man.
Right, yeah. So I'm assuming Dez is behind the scenes doing the framings. So I guess we're going into final thoughts. Unless Dez wants to say one last thing before we go into final thoughts.
Nope. I think he'll just say it in final thoughts if he needs to.
Radio, we're going to wait. He's back.
I'll go ahead with my final thought first. Keep it short and sweet. This movie is great. It's a masterpiece. Like I said in the beginning, amazing details in the background. Uh, it's very complex. It's definitely something you want to rewatch at some point in your lifetime. It could be you can let time fly by, or you can watch it twice if you want to catch like those little details. Um, but it's such an emotional story and journey, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody that has a heart. Take it, JP.
Radio. So, Caleb, want to give your final thought?
I agree. It's a really, really good film. I don't think it's going to be something I'm going to revisit like very soon, just because I do think that it's a little there's so much to empathize that it's kind of exhausting for like if like emotions are something that's exhausting for a person. Um, I would say give yourself some time, but I do think that this is something that everyone should watch once in their lifetime.
For sure. And let's pass the window. Let's go to Jason and Dino's window right now.
Jason Dino's window.
Any moment now.
Right into the window.
Yeah, you got no control, JP. That's like, don't tell me what to do, JP. I control this world.
Oh my god, it just came out of my nose.
You good? You good?
Go back to them.
No, back to JP. Zoom in on JP. Can you zoom in on him?
Dun, dun, dun.
Ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-bum-bum-bum. All right. I guess I'll final thoughts. I really loved it. I think it's one of those kind of what you guys have also been saying, I would revisit this film again. I don't think right away, and I think like some of the other films that we've watched that I have seen before, it's one of those like if I see it once every 5 years or every 10 years, it has a completely different meaning, or it makes me feel something different that it didn't the first time. And this is definitely, I can already tell this is going to be one of those, right? Just like as I evolve as a human being and I get older, whatever, I will look at it differently. And maybe next time I'll be like, oh, the aunt was a good guy, you know, or something like that, right?
Yeah,
The aunt
very
was the true hero.
Yeah. The aunt was the hero all along. So
like.
maybe I gotta be a homeowner before I start feeling that. Maybe that's why
No.
someone else is like the aunt is his favorite character. You know, I'm not saying who, but someone I know might
Siraj.
have that feeling. No, I really enjoyed it. I really like the Ghibli Gibbles cartoons, films. They're all really great, and they all have it's just really good storytelling. So I would recommend this to a lot of people. It wouldn't be, you know what? I'll put it this way: if cartoons come up or whatever and Ghibli comes out, I wouldn't recommend this as the first Ghibli cartoon for people to watch. But it's definitely gonna be in the repertoire of like, oh, you're into anime? Oh, have you seen Ghibli cartoons? Oh, you haven't? Well, there are these movies, and there's a cat bus and all this other stuff that Totoro and stuff that you might really enjoy. And then I would recommend this. This could be the third or fourth Ghibli cartoon that I would recommend if I'm just recommending anime wise. But I really enjoyed it.
I love this movie. I said it in the beginning, and I'll say it again. Like this thing is touching, and it's I was gonna say warming, and that may not be the right word. That might be taken the wrong way. There's a lot to be considered about this film.
There is heartwarming stuff in it.
There's a ton of heartwarming stuff in it. And you know what? This movie kind of it sets a very high bar for storytelling, for film, for animation. So I would recommend this thing to
Subject
anyone
matter.
because I really just want everyone to have seen this thing. You know, even people who may not want to read subtitles. I just want people to have experienced it because whoever said it, it's a masterpiece. It really is. It's one of the highest level films I've ever seen. Um, and not just the animation, which all the details are like really refined, and everybody kind of mentioned that at one point or another. I do want to, like I said, I'm going to revisit this movie again because I do feel like I can watch it again and get a different take of it right away, and I'm going to. But yeah, I would recommend this movie to anyone who's into anything. Highly recommend. 2 thumbs up. It resonates emotionally on a lot of different levels. There's a lot of different elements about friendship and family and struggle and the hardships of war and the brutality of man. And there's a lot of things to be considered in this thing. And I've never quite seen a story like it. It's kind of sort of a fresh sort of storytelling, and I'm really happy it was done in animation opposed to live action. Those are my final thoughts, and I'm sticking with them.
I'm gonna pass it down to Raymond.
This whole time I've been racking my brain trying to remember both my teacher's name from 10th grade English. And I'm usually really good with my teachers' names because I love them all. But I can't remember. It's bothering me. But anyway, he made us watch quite a few things. We watched a snippet from the Fog of War documentary. We read a few articles by survivors of Hiroshima and firebombing raids by the U.S. government, and then a few other things, and then we watched this, and it was just like a nice mix of things that we
And
took
that
in.
was English class or was it literature? Well,
Yeah, it was literature or English class, and what was part of that conversation that we had was um, how the fire bombings had just as bad or lasting impact as the atomic bombs because a lot of cities were made out of wood. Um, so even if the firebombing started in one spot, which they didn't, we saw the planes just dump it everywhere, but it would spread really fast because everything was made out of wood, and these people would try to rush to save themselves, and so they'd rush to the water, but then the water, any nearby bodies of water became like, you know,
Death
lakes of fire. So it was just chaos everywhere. Um, so it was very, very catastrophic, ruined any like crops from being able to be grown and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I don't, but the reason I'm saying this all is because I feel like my teacher did a really great job of bringing together lots of pieces of literature, both film, documentary, narrative, non-narrative, and then fiction, nonfiction. But yeah, I first time I watched it, it must have been 2008. I was like doing the math as well, so about 13 years ago, and it's left an impact on me since then, and I think everyone should watch it. I think it's also the darkest I'm not sure how to say it, Studio Ghibli film. Um, and yeah.
Well, I think Spirited Away might have been darker. There was a lot of shading in that film.
wow.
Look, he's so pleased.
I had to throw it at least one. I've
No,
been very
no.
polite. I've been behaving throughout this whole thing. I've been treating the subject matter with such I deserve an award.
That's what you
Good
deserve.
job, JP. Well done, buddy.
No, don't. You know, no.
Good job waiting to the end, but
Oh.
Yeah, I'm a little. I'm not mad, JP. I'm just a little disappointed.
I'm getting the red light from everybody. Okay, so my final thought, man, like I, I'm only being repetitive at this point. It's a very heavy movie. As short as it is, it's definitely a roller coaster of emotions, and just uh, my audio is being wacky. All right, but that's okay. Um, but yeah, beautiful film all around. I'm glad that I got a chance to revisit it with all you guys because I remember watching it the first time. Ah man, it was definitely because especially since I watched this with family and it struck even harder with them. So I would definitely recommend it to basically anybody. I guess with an asterisk, I would probably hold this off from the little ones at first, or unless you know that they can handle the subject matter, or you feel like they are at least that they could because I think some children like you don't want to expose this sort of maturity quite just yet. Everyone grows in their own pace, so if you want to show it to children, at least have an idea of like if they are ready. If not, just watch My Neighbor Totoro. It's fine. Um, but I'm getting the hankering. I'm getting the sense that Jason has one last final query before we head off.
yeah, you know what? I'm glad you did have that hankering, JP. Maybe I sent that to you telepathically because I do have a question for Steve. Steve, what do you got for us next week?
Next week, but why do you ask me when you know that you are the person that's next?
What? Well, if it's up to me, then I have chosen the movie The Hidden Blade.
Oh,
Wait.
man.
Oh,
A
wow.
samurai flick. And the reason I chose this movie is to get us, and it was difficult to get us out of animation, because I know JP wanted to keep us there for the next 10 years. But I found a way out. And I found a way out through the actress who plays the mother in Grave of the Fireflies. She plays a very small part in this film. Her name is Yoshiko Shinohara. And so she plays a small role in this film. We're going to be exploring Japanese samurai
Spanish, apparently.
cinema
Did he hear
in
that?
Espanol.
I was hoping to watch Pompoko.
What?
That's okay.
Mononoke? You probably still could, because it's probably going to be like just kind of a swirl of just like, if we're staying in Japanese animation and film.
If there's an English dub, someone will find
No,
a way out.
We'll get out. We'll get out. You'll see.
We'll find a
Anyway,
way.
for Raymond Arturo Perez, for Michaela, JP, El Dondino, Jason Eccles, and me, Steve the Stevie. We'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm JP Cerno and welcome. Hi, I'm JP Cerno and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Hi, I'm JP Cerno and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Fucking shit. Okay. Hey, I'm JP Cerno and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Right? Jesus Christ. And I just, as soon as it's the third one, because this is the third one, right? I am JP Cerno and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Oye Dimelo. Super cut of every time I fuck it up. Hey, I'm JP Cerno and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Hey, I'm JP Cerno and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo Network. And click here for additional videos and don't forget to subscribe. The lonely singles in your neighborhood already did.